games, like put them on a scatter map and say this one is based on the following engine and this one is based on the following engine, and making like a bunch of islands and they're all connected. A lot of the engines, by the way, are free software these days, or
And
components of them will be free
and this is,
software.
I mean,
And
this is mate. Sorry.
so, so a lot of the games themselves, you could call them skins. It would be a funny way of saying it, but you kind of say, I'm going to get Unreal Engine with the skin, the alien skin or the army skin. And what it will involve is characters. So the engine will deal with different datasets. So the games then become a form of art, copyright. Um, so there will be a bunch of artists sitting with Blender if they want to use free software and designing characters, and then there will be rules on how they behave. Usually the physics is done by some free open source software or proprietary if some prefer it. And we also interviewed in one of our shows some of the game developers, and I think they were using some kind of engine that would handle the physics, and I think it was free software. I can't remember right now when we interviewed them. A couple of
Was that
Polish
you
game
talking about
developers.
Greedy Car Thieves?
Yeah,
Which was based
yeah,
like
yeah,
on a yeah.
yeah, and it's a very nice game. It looks very nice, and there's a lot of reuse of code. Now, here's kind of a hypothetical um, proposition of sorts. Maybe one day some game company will decide, okay, we would like to start this open source crowdsourcing gaming thing. Send us images of yourself, or send us 3D sets that you created in your house of cars and people, and let's create a game together. And the funding will be easier to take care of because people will sign away a kind of a waiver saying you can use it in any way you want for the game, and people will feel like part of the game. They will feel involved. Maybe lots of them will want to play it. To some degree, that's what we had with Second Life, if you can remember it still. I think it's kind of extinct now.
Wasn't that written with oh
A Samono there.
yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't that a
Yeah.
mono? Yeah.
Yeah, but let's not concentrate on
Okay.
that. It's written with various things, and
Yeah.
Unity 3D uses Mono as well. So quite a few games have some element of Mono in them. But and Firefox wants to do some kind of a game in um, hmm, how should I put it? They want to market Firefox as a gaming platform in which you can render games and play games. And one of the first deals they did to achieve that was with Unity. Although they wouldn't say it very publicly, it was to do with Mono to some degree. And when I was first appointed as like the CEO before the whole shitstorm started, I kind of said like the one thing we need to fix is them dealing with Unity, because shortly afterwards they dealt with another game engine within Firefox. So it's not doesn't have to be just Unity 3D, which is using Mono. And you do see that there are several efforts to bring together things that are free software uh, to kind of lower the barrier to entry as as you wish to approach potential users of games, so they don't have to download the game, they can play it over the web, and also it will be easier to develop for because you have the framework, you just have to provide some inputs. Back in like the 90s, there were several frameworks in which you could kind of create your own games, and it was a bit of a hip thing, at least back then. You can create your own quest, like King's Quest and Space Quest and Police.
That was Sierra Online, wasn't that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they had some frameworks by which you could put the characters and move them around and define rules by which basically they gave you like bits of what they were using themselves, I suppose, to create their games, and they let you create your own game. It's not been around for a while. I've not seen anything like this recently, but
Well,
in any case, I think that the point to make here is let's wait and see if the whole crowdsourcing mentality, which is very, very hot right now in the open source intelligence community, as you might call it, like Facebook, where people are basically doing peer surveillance and acting as informants on each other. Let's see if that mentality will be used positively to create fun games for people that they can participate in.
Just my final controversial thing on this subject before we move on, and obviously feel free if you want to shout back at me afterwards, but I'm going to say this about gaming, and like I say, I make a clear distinction here. My personal opinion says that gaming is in a separate box to everything else that we enjoy in the open source world, which undoubtedly has so many benefits being open source software, but the gaming is in a different box. And I'll give an example, and I always look back to a game from, I believe, mid-80s. I think that was when it was released. It was called Elite, and it was a game written by Ian Bell and David Braben, and it was put on most platforms I can think of at some point in their history. This game was written in 32K, and it contained an actual star map of the entire galaxy as part of the game, and it was sort of like the first type sandbox type game on the 8-bit computers. Very popular, very successful, and an amazing piece of programming work made by two geniuses who went on to write many other amazing pieces of software. Now, if I skip on a few years and we look at the demo scene on the Amiga, and to a varying degree on Atari ST as well, both these environments, demo scene on the Amiga and the proprietary gaming scene on the 8-bit computers, they didn't share their code. There was no collaboration, and as a result, instead of having being held back, what you got was far more creativity. Because, for example, in terms of the Amiga demo scene, you had demo crews which were making basically tech demos showing the advantages of the Amiga computer in the example of the Amiga demo scene, and they would break all the rules. They would do things which were completely unwritten in the tech manuals that apparently were impossible to produce, and they did that because they were in competition with other groups who also didn't share their source code and wouldn't say their secrets. And as a result, some of the boundaries that the Amiga had placed in it when it was first released and its tech manuals were publicly released were completely broken because of these people that sat in rooms trying to outdo their friends. The same in the proprietary world. I mean, had the Elite developers, he didn't have any other source code to cut, copy and paste from. He didn't have any World Wide Web to have debates about and throw code up and get opinions and have a look at other people's similar works. He had to sit in the bedroom or an office somewhere.
They could copy and paste. I mean,
well,
okay.
no, I was just
look at the way. Okay, look at the beginnings of Microsoft. I don't want to go into this, but there was a lot of copying by hiring people who had worked for previous companies or competitors.
Oh, that was a
to
business
basically
plan.
produce. Yeah. So there was a lot of copying and pasting, and it was hidden by compiling the code. And it took a while to see all that. There were lawsuits as well. So that was happening. It just wasn't legalized in the same way that a lot of people do things or consume drugs that are not legal. But just because we are not catching them doesn't mean it's not happening.
I mean, but I think in the case of things like Elite, and that was just one example. I mean, that was something that was so completely unique and so completely novel. Technically, or on paper, it should be impossible. You cannot have a fully functioning star map on a 32-bit computer, a 32K computer, on a 5.25-inch floppy disk. It just can't be done. It just on a pure numbers basis for the amount of data. But somehow, Ian Bell and David Braben have developed this piece of code which ran on the BBCB and then a few other computers after that, and it developed over time. And they didn't have the luxury.
Star map. Maybe this. Even back in the 80s, we knew that there were, at least back then 100. If you look at Cosmos, the number back then was 100 million suns. So even if you do the mathematics, even if they made a binary map where every, just the existence of a star is mapped, is far too few ones and zeros to just even account for the number.
But I mean, the point I make, is just I think there is a definite distinction. And if I may, I'll just add one final point, which is completely uncontroversial about my opinion in respect of gaming, which had a lot of people quite confused. It's been reported in the last, I believe, a few days, ET has been discovered in New Mexico. It's been dug up and discovered. Now, this had a lot of interest initially because it was very badly reported by some people on their Twitter feeds, and by all accounts, a lot of conspiracy folk and alien believers have been